welcome librarian Jordan Ostrum to join us for the final paper of our Friday session.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Ostrum. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm here to talk about the 6 ways in which the wicked Dolores Jane Umbridge now mirrors her notorious creator, J.K. Rowling. I will be exploring the pair's affinity for education and how they rather ironically both fall prey to disinformation due to their attachment to respective extinction phobias, a concept I'll be defining later. This in turn catalyzes each woman's further radicalization, which allows both women more power in their respective spheres of influence due to the macro level radicalization that has occurred in the fictional and real universes these women inhabit. Ultimately, both women attempt to appear charming and charitable, but at heart they are both wicked. So, the first way in which these women mirror each other is through their shared affinity for education and their deep understanding of educational spaces as powerful political battlegrounds. We see this straight away for Umbridge in her introductory speech that she gives at the start of term feast in the Order of the Phoenix. Umbridge is quite explicit about broadcasting the import she places on education, not only for the magical community writ large, but for the safety and security of the government in particular. Only Hermione is really able to pick up on how devastating this is going to be for the politics of Hogwarts at large, but um, she does attempt to share this with Ron and Harry. We can mirror Umbridge's introductory speech with what I deem as Rowling's first foray into TERFdom, which came in the form of a public letter on issues of gender and sex that she posted on her website in the summer of 2020. In it, she made clear her implicit understanding of the political power of education. Um, she frames the entire topic through the lens of being a former teacher and as someone who values what she calls safeguarding. Umbridge, too, cares deeply about safeguarding. In fact, she subscribes to what Paulo Freire, in his landmark text Pedagogy of the Oppressed, calls the banking model of education, in which students are simply empty receptacles to be filled with prescribed knowledge by the all-knowing teacher, a role that Umbridge is all too happy to play. Freire, of course, decries this educational model, uplifting instead a model based on a collaborative, creative search for and discovery of liberatory knowledge. Rowling mirrors Umbridge in this sense by subscribing to what I deem a banking model of gender. Students and youth in general, from Rowling's perspective, should not engage in a collaborative, creative search for and discovery of a liberatory sense of their gendered self. Instead, students are simply empty receptacles to be prescribed a gender at birth. Umbridge's adherence to the banking model of education comes from the same place as Rowling's adherence to the banking model of gender, risk avoidance. Rowling fears for students' safety and prolifically posts pseudoscience about the dangers, so-called, of medical transition for youth, all of which has been debunked by the medical community. Umbridge, on the other hand, has a fear of students and doesn't seek to give them any tools with which to revolt. Despite all this, both women are highly competent and celebrated in their fields, which makes it rather ironic that despite being big supporters of education, they both succumb to false information. Their ideological obsession is what serves as the vectors for these falsehoods to make it past the critical thinking parts of their brain. We see this for Umbridge in The Order of the Phoenix, when Hermione is able to trick her into the woods to be attacked by Grop. In what is quite a long scene, Umbridge nearly deduces Hermione's deceit at every turn, but at every turn, Hermione is able to push one of Umbridge's many ideological buttons. Fear of racial purity, fear of students, paranoia about her political enemies. Thus, Umbridge's ideology is her own temporary downfall. Rowling similarly falls for disinformation about the cisgender female boxer Imani Khalif, whom she has obsessed over for months and cannot think rationally about despite all of the available empirical evidence. Both women's behaviors seem to align with Stephen Colbert's concept of truthiness. If your gut tells you something's true, why believe your brain? So what explains this? Well, I think a really helpful concept is the concept of extinction phobia. Heike Schotte has written about this in Transgender Studies Quarterly, and it's essentially a terrified anxiety that you could become extinct, you and your people could be eradicated due to an other that has psychologically been transformed into an all-powerful enemy, despite the fact that this subclass of humanity is in fact much less powerful and is in fact marginalized. This term itself relates to another term that I find extremely helpful, psychologist Jennifer Freyd's concept of DARVO, which South Park, with hilarious profundity, demonstrated through Mr. Garrison as President Trump. DARVO works like this. First, you deny that you did wrong, then you attack the person claiming you did wrong, and instead state that you are the victim, not the perpetrator of the wrongdoing. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Umbridge thinks that school children half her age are the real threat at Hogwarts rather than herself. Rowling continually points to the specter of trans woman as rapist, a top 10 TERF talking point. At no point from what I have been able to research does J.K. Rowling indicate the empirical reality, which is that trans folks are more likely than cis folks to be targets, to be victims of sexual violence. Instead, Rowling only raises the talking point to discuss the spurious and undocumented claims of trans women as potential perpetrators of sexual violence against cisgender women. So these extinction phobias have led both women to further radicalize. With Umbridge in her character arc in The Order of the Phoenix, she eventually takes over the entire school and nearly engages in torture of underage students using criminal magic. J.K. Rowling has been radicalized as well. To demonstrate how far she has fallen, we need only look at her first foray into TERFdom, in which, despite engaging in some really spurious and unsavory talking points, she also full-throatedly proclaimed that trans lives matter. Of course, trans lives matter is what she wrote in that letter. She is singing a very different tune these days. She is engaging in Nazi crimes denial, calling the reality that trans people were victims of the Nazis a, quote, fever dream. She's implying that it is trans people who are the true totalitarians, again bringing up the specter of rape and sexual violence. So, regrettably, as these women have radicalized, they have come to mirror not only each other, but the world around them, thus accruing more power in their respective universes. In the fictional wizarding world of Harry Potter, Umbridge, when we meet her again in the middle of Book 7, has become a high-ranking official in the Nazi allegory government. She serves both in a Joseph Goebbels role, mass distributing propaganda about the dangers of race mixing, and also conducts trials against the alleged race mixers themselves. For Rowling's part, she has used her immense wealth and social media presence to materially further her transphobic aims. Her wealth helped procure a tangible legal win for the cause of erasing transgender rights and dignity from the legal justice system in her home country, and her crusade shows no signs of stopping there. We shall have to see what the future holds, but the comparison is clear. Both J.K. Rowling and her creation Dolores Umbridge attempt to appear as charming and charitable, but appearances, as Rowling attempted to teach us with her books, can be deceiving. Umbridge's falsetto facade barely belies her fascist reality, and while Rowling tried to seem like a martyr for her righteous cause, she is in truth a plain Jane, pain-causing crusader who takes umbrage at reality, a warrior at war against human decency, basic dignity, and truth itself. So, the world's most famous children's author has publicly transitioned into a person that resembles her most reviled female character, Dolores Umbridge. J.K. Rowling and her creation both hold education in high esteem, but neither do so for strictly sentimental reasons. Instead, they each understand the political power of youth and information networks. Despite this, they are incapable of accepting information that contradicts their worldview, and both easily succumb to falsehoods. This is because both the real person and her fictional character are intractably attached to their respective extinction phobias. This has led them to becoming increasingly radicalized into their publicly professed ideologies, which in turn has enabled them to possess an expanding sense of influence as the political universe increasingly reflects each woman's reactionary views. Both Umbridge and Rowling may work hard to continue to brand herself as a sweet and selfless promoter of the truth, but in reality, each is a selfish fetishizer of propaganda, and each compulsively seeks to persuade the public to persecute their chosen targets. So how does this implicate fans of Harry Potter? Well, first, I'd argue we must recognize the importance of this topic. The purpose of this presentation has not been for me to simply graft the wrongs and ragings of a fallen children's author onto those of her fictional character, though it has mostly been that. This inquiry matters because as Harry Potter fans, trans advocates, and people of conscience the world over has seen, one billionaire's spiral into hallucinatory levels of bigotry affects everyone. Twitter cum X has given us several such characters, and unlike Umbridge, they have been all too real. Perhaps by better understanding one creator's transformation into her worst monster, we can prevent further falls down the rabbit hole of transphobia. Second, I will join the chorus in saying that trans lives are more important than Harry Potter. As the transphobia of powerful political actors foments into violence, both legislative and otherwise, now is the time to materially support our transgender human siblings. After all, as Professor Minerva McGonagall exasperatedly explains to Harry, this is not just about, quote, truth or lies. It's about power. If more fans truly understood how wicked the series' creator has become, as wicked as Umbridge, then I doubt HBO Max would have found it financially viable to greenlight a TV revamp of the franchise. May we use the power of our purse strings to help the series meet a fate worse than Fantastic Beasts. Finally, I believe this inquiry demonstrates something that Yoda has been telling us all along. Fear, says the Jedi Master, is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Truly, fear, be it at the extinction phobia level or not, is the alchemical force that warps together information and emotion to form violent ideologies. Fear is the true nature of evil. The first quarter of this century has proven to be filled with fear, suffering, and violence. May we Harry Potter fans, weavers of community, move forward with the force of courage, compassion, and healing. And I just want to give a highlight that this is a work in progress that will be published in Potions, Powers, and Prejudice, Reassessing Harry Potter by Litwin Press, with the editors Jason Phillips, Jordan Rood, and Nikki Stansel.